everybody, welcome back into Bayou Time. Harry McCullough here. We're going to spend a couple of sessions with Joe Orgeron, of course, the representative from South Louisiana, getting ready. A little pregame party for the session that's coming up on April 10th. That's the day after Easter. You guys will be going into work.
Going back in.
District 54, I should say. I was kind of stumped on that for a second. But so anyway, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I know you got a lot going on and before a session for sure. So thought we'd go over some of the big, big hits that are going to be played when you guys get up to Baton Rouge. So you said one of the hottest ones, and I know a lot of places around the world, they probably don't think it's that hot. Speckled trout, size limit, and number limit.
Correct. Even though I don't think there's any legislation being proposed there, the Wildlife and Fisheries had come out with some recommendations to change the number limit from 25 down to 15 and the size limit from a minimum of 12 inches to 13 and a half. And there was a lot of pushback from recreational fishing and charter fishermen and a lot of the bait and tackle shops and a lot of the businesses, at least in my district, that didn't like the 13 and a half inch minimum size. They were okay with they understand
the number.
They all understand that there's an issue and something needs to be done, but they really didn't like changing the minimum size. And in the legislature, we have the opportunity to call an oversight meeting, and we did that. We brought in Wildlife and Fisheries. They once again explained why they set it to where it was. And what became clear is that unlike red snapper and redfish that are pretty stout species and live 25, 30 years, speckled trout, if you find a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old speckled trout, that's old age. They run on a much quicker timeline life cycle, and they're much in the earlier years. They're much more fragile, I guess you could say. You catch that little 8-incher, right, and you usually see blood or something like that. So anyway, what we told them was that there was a lot of pushback on that minimum size, and we shot down their original plan, which was to try to correct the problem within a 5-year span, which was very ambitious. And they actually recently had a commission meeting and came back, and the new plan, or what they're going to probably float, is keeping the reduction in the amount you keep from 25 down to 15, leaving the minimum size at 12 inches, but making a slot like with redfish so that of your 15 that you keep, only one can be above 19 inches or some size. It hadn't been determined, 19, 20, but a real big trout. You could only have one of the big size. And the rationale for that is that it's primarily only females that get that very large size. And whenever they get that big, they spawn a lot of eggs, and they help repopulate the species.
That's real interesting. So, look, we've all been fishing, right, where you hit that hole and you can't get a bait in the water, but they're all 11 and a half. Seems like you got to stretch them out. And I know that's what everybody's worried about, that, look, we're going to be out here all day and never catch a keeper fish, right?
Correct. And if they moved it to that 13 and a half, it would even be harder, more of the fragile, smaller fish handling. Right. And we've all seen where you throw back a fish or a dolphin
food, right?
Yeah, so feeding flipper. So.
I had never heard that. So about 19 inches will be the limit for just one of those, kind of like redfish, right?
Correct. That would be like your bull trout, I guess you could go. But it's really the females that grow that big.
Oh, that's interesting.
But that's not finalized. That's not finalized. Right. That was just at the last commission meeting. That's what the biologist's plan B number 1 was. Right. So we're going to probably have some meetings with the biologists to go
Actually, that's awesome that they work with you. Because, look, I know your district, right?
Absolutely.
I know your district is comprised of both commercial and recreational guys. Right. Plenty of them on both sides. So what's their biggest concern? Did they, does it come from the commercials or from recreational?
No,
Specs mostly recreational.
Yeah, right? It's very, very, very small percentage of commercial take on speckled trout. But just basically keeping what they call the spawning biomass, the amount of females, reproductive females, with the critical minimal number of males to keep the species going. Now they're also starting to come out with reports about their red drum, their redfish stock assessment. And just like they did with speckled trouts 2 years ago, they're raising the warning that something maybe need to be done with redfish. And as you know from previous takes, I had pushed for modifications to the menhaden or the pogie boats,
Right.
to try to keep them a little bit away from the beach, because it's called isolated removals. So they're taking a large amount of forage fish. Some of the species that the big red drum eat near the shore are those pogies. And there's been some NOAA reports that have recently come out that talk about the whole ecosystem of the Gulf and what they call the trophic pyramid, and how those isolated removals could affect the downstream predators like red drum and mackerel, and to a lesser extent the trout.
Will we see any rules for that?
They're looking at it. So this is all very embryonic thought, but they're the 5 that with one bull red. There's talk of taking the 5 down to possibly 3, changing the slot size, maybe going up on the 16 to larger, larger on one side and smaller on the bulls, smaller on the one that you can't keep, or eliminating the one large one that you keep altogether.
And then snapper, that's always been one they've kind of played with. But I think everybody was happy with the weekend.
Absolutely, that was whenever the feds were doing it. We had like some 9-day, 9-day. And
bad weather, and you never get out there.
In doing all this legislative work, I found out that the federal bureaucracy and the slowness of the data percolating through the system was the reason why they had those short ones. But now Louisiana manages it, and it's much better.
All right. Let's talk about infrastructure, because that has a lot going on where you're at in your district right now. I guess we should start with bridges, and then we'll get to levees and elevated highways. Huh?
Right. Well, I'll start with the elevated highway. We have in Lower Lafourche LA1 elevated highway project, which is one of the largest infrastructure projects in Louisiana. And we're currently, James Construction's the contractor, and they're blowing and going and working on it. In that process, they need to cross through our beloved South Lafourche levee. And in doing that, they actually had to make a hole in the levee and putting a large, what they call a T-wall, that'll be underneath the bridge and actually be higher than the surrounding levee. They're going to go all the way to about 22 feet or 20-something feet right underneath the bridge. And but the good news is that they started on the very first day, at the very end of the hurricane season. They started on the first day that they could, and it's on schedule to be completed before hurricane season starts. So we'll be back to 100% protection as they build out the elevated highway from Golden Meadow, reaching all the way to Leeville at the 90-degree turn past the toll plaza.
Which was always what they were planning on doing, because the 90 degrees we never thought made a lot of sense.
How many times people ask, why did they put this sharp turn in your highway? Well,
now you're gonna find
it's going to be because it's going to come from Golden Meadow, and the hopeful or the completion date is July of 2027.
2027.
Correct.
So it'll go all the way through. Now, is that where, kind of like the Superdome right now, they're making renovations, but they can't do it in football. So right when football's over, they start doing it.
Correct.
And Mardi Gras has to move, and basketball, whatever. Is it the same way that you have to wait till hurricane season's over, or does the construction blow and go the whole time?
They're going to be blowing and going between now and July 27th nonstop. So
again, they're not affecting the levee, so they can just continue to work.
The only effect of the levee was building what would be under the bridge, and they're doing that in the off-season right now.
Right. So yeah, Wendell Curo wouldn't have been happy with that.
Correct. So, he made sure it got done appropriately. But we do have other problems with other bridges, though.
Yeah. So let's talk about the other bridges. So right when one was fixed, another one went down. Right?
Yeah, we had the what we call the South Lafourche Bridge in Galliano that was out last year, kind of right around October, Halloween, and it got fixed on, I believe, November 10th or 11th, and the day before that bridge got fixed, the Golden Meadow Bridge, all the way at the end, the last bridge that connects 308 and LA1 actually went down, and that one's a much more dire situation. It's going to take a lot of refurbishment of the bridge deck. The span is good, my understanding, but the actual bridge deck that moves up and down, the cars roll over, has some major structural problems. So much so that it couldn't be derated for light traffic or anything. Had to be completely taken out. And I actually have a meeting tomorrow at DOTD headquarters in Baton Rouge to fully understand the timeline, the milestones on the getting the bid out, the letting process of finding out who's going to be doing the construction, the timing of that. And that's the good news, is that I'm gonna have those mile markers or temporal markers on keeping them on track or staying on them. The bad news is that right now the outlook is a completion not till August or September of this year. Yeah. So that's a little longer than, I mean, that's going to be almost like 11 months, 10 months that the bridge will be out.
How far is that from like the end of that, where that bridge is to the Galliano Bridge, to the South Lafourche Bridge?
To the
So
South
that's the
Lafourche
next
Bridge
bridge,
is
right?
about 6 miles.
6 miles, okay.
Yeah, 6 or 7 miles.
And then up to La Rose, and then
They got the Galliano Bridge that's about 4 miles. So most of the bridges in South Lafourche are about a 4 mile span between them. So, but the problem is that this is the last one at the end, and it brings up issues with fire, police, ambulance, and things like that. That someone in that community, the Puente Sosis community on 308 at the very end, you gotta go all the way around, stuff like that.
right. Any other big projects that'll be going on?
Let me take a look. 308's being resurfaced. So basically that area starting at the very, very end of 308 in Golden Meta on the east side there. If anybody has a house on there, you see a lot of the markings on the ground, and that goes all the way up to the South Lafourche Bridge right at Burger King. And they're going to be...
So there's going to be one lane while they're doing it? Or
I'm not sure.
Well, you know how they do it.
Yeah, probably so, but I know that right now they're in the survey marking, and I got it kind of like a timeline on that. It's going to move into, most of April will be what they call base work, like going and do spot repairs in places. And then basically by the end of April, they're hoping to start and grind out the old and overlay with new asphalt all in a shot. So.
How long does that last typically, a highway like that? I don't know, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but...
I mean, I remember probably it was 12, 15 years the last time that they did it, and I mean, some of the things, I've heard reports where Louisiana uses substandard material and stuff like that, and I don't know if it's that as much as the terra firma that we sit on, that, that
and trucks.
We basically most of the stuff down here, we sit
around
on what I call a wet sponge. We build all our stuff, so you see it during droughts. I mean, that's whenever your windows and your doors don't want to open and stuff. So
you have a bill that's actually hoping to keep more money to where the coast is, right?
Correct. Last year, I ran a bill that unfortunately didn't make it all the way through, but it was dedicating any revenue that comes from any offshore activities related to renewable energy, that would be paired with any royalty money that all now is dedicated to the, I guess you could say, the Coastal Protection Restoration Fund. So CPRA is the state entity that has the master plan that builds rebuilds the barrier islands, the ridge creation, shoreline stabilization, and eventually diversions, river diversions to help build up the marsh that we need to protect our levee systems, to help attenuate or slow down that storm surge. And I'm running a bill so that additional monies can be paired with what we call GOMESA money, which is from oil and gas, far offshore oil and gas money. That we're both Senator Cassidy and Representative Scalise are both running bills to try to increase Louisiana's share of the GOMESA money from oil royalties.
I got you. We still got money in the state. Y'all not gonna have any fights right now. It seems,
for now,
we know what's coming, right?
We do. You have the 0.45 temporary sales tax, and every year they're talking about, they kind of do like I guess you could call it a legislative straw poll. How you feeling about extending the temporary tax? And I'm in the camp of no. It was temporary, and it was, we've had surpluses in the last year, and we found good one-time uses for it. But I'm hoping that we will be able to not hit a fiscal cliff whenever it falls off, but be able to I guess phase our way out of it.
Yeah.
There were bills last year that tried to do that, but they got shot down.
Yeah, you guys are always kind of in an election years, but as a governor, when there's an election, governor's election, does that make any difference in how you guys react? Maybe we might get somebody in there next time.
Yeah, there are some bills that people don't bring up, or they wait until the next governor comes in. But right now, it's all about making Louisiana more competitive. We're losing population. Spoke about it last time with you. That at least making ourselves competitive across the Gulf State is probably the most important thing right now to keep people.
We got the roadmaps on either side of us here, but we can't seem to get that straight, especially in a Sun Belt area where the Sun Belt seems to have been doing good. It's been a population boom, and Louisiana's going the opposite direction. So, yeah, something's going on there. Let's talk a little localer with tax. You're not the entire area, but Lafourche makes up most of your district.
Correct.
I would think.
Correct. With the exception of Grand Isle,
Right.
I'm pretty much take care of most of Lower Lafourche, and we are going to have some Lafourche specific items on the ballot coming in March, which is basically called tax consolidation. And living in Terrebonne, consolidated government, Lafourche, we've seemed to tax ourselves with a lot of dedicated taxes into individual buckets.
Which gets our state in trouble, right?
Well, as times and needs change, you get surpluses in some buckets and deficits in the other bucket, and it's dedicated. The guys with the surplus will find a way to spend it so that they use it. And I think what our parish president is trying to do, and even though there's a lot of people who are looking at the individual, myopically focused on this is down to buy money being sent up to buy, but it's you really need to look at it as a much larger picture of the way that it was explained to me back in 2018 whenever the teacher school raise tax had failed. It was in the worst time of the oil and gas downturn, but someone told me then, the people of Lafourche are taxed enough to cover everything that Lafourche needs. The problem is it's in all these dedicated buckets. So it's going to take someone with guts and political muster to be able to try to change the system. And I believe that even though there might be 30 to 40 individual buckets, our parish president is taking like 4 at a time.
Right.
So he had the option. He was told he does good presentations that he say you could do nothing, which we didn't want to do. You could raise more taxes, which absolutely we don't want to do. And then the other 2 options are to reform the tax structure you have now, and you do it all at once. Bring everybody to the table, which was kind of my preference. Right. But he chose the 4th option, which is taking it piecemeal. And so what we're seeing on the ballot is the first proposals
like an amendment, though,
to kind of change some of the tax districting and things like that. But the point to make is that if they pass, this would be the first few steps in a long journey to reform all the districts. So. It might be road sales and garbage and drainage this time around, but eventually it'll be library and ambulance and fire districts and recreational districts and stuff like that.
Archie Chesson is kind of right in the middle there. He's in with Lockport, Matthews, and Raceland in that area, so he's kind of straddling the upper and lower. But it's like the state of California, right? You got northern Lafourche and got lower Lafourche, and then everybody in between. So it's kind of tough to manage that.
The linear, the up the bayou, down the bayou does make it a little bit more difficult.
Right.
There'll be places where an up the bayou and a down the bayou district will make sense. Right. But there are some where, as Archie says, one Lafourche would make the most sense.
Yeah, look, it's a good time for it. We can all come together after what we've been through the last 3 years. So, Joe, appreciate it, man. Hope you do well and have a good session as it starts on April 10th. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back with more Bayou Time after